Moving on to item 5, consent calendar. All items are considered routine or implementation and from earlier council action and may be enacted on one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested. There's 3 things that I have. One is I would like to ask just for a comment or staff to give a little more information. Don't need it pulled for a separate vote on item E and D. I'm sorry, E and F. Apologize, E and F. And then for Michael, the vice mayor, I know on item D, we're going to have to take that separate because he's recused from that. And so we'll have to go through that process. So is there anybody else who wants to pull or add anything? Okay. Councilman Mason.
Yeah, I just have a question about A and B. I don't think it has to be pulled, but I just have a question.
Beautiful.
And then just some questions about F, because D is going to be pulled separately anyway. So. Yeah,
we need to.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So with hearing that none, we'll first going to go to item A for a question from Councilmember Mason, accept accounts payable of June 22nd, 29th, and July 6th.
Yeah, I mean, so my question, actually, I'm sorry, it's just A, and F, not B. So my question is just if we could get a little bit of clarification on why the plumbing costs were about $50,000. I looked through this and we're using, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4 plumbing companies in my notes. And these are in the months that we've been in shelter in place, and facilities have been closed, and we're just in such a deficit. I'm not understanding why the cost is so high.
Sure, we can research that and provide the council with additional details on those particular expenditures and the rationale in the contract.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. And so that was my question regarding A.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll move on to item E, which is adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute all restricted grant agreements and any amendments hereon too with the California Department of Transportation for the development of a San Bruno safe routes to school plan. And it's just to provide a little information, not to go into great detail.
Sure. So Public Works Director Jimmy Tan is on the line, so I will ask for him to be brought in the room, and I will give a quick. He's here, so I will not do that. I'll let him do it.
Yes, I am here. Actually, sorry about that. I was in the other waiting room. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, Public Works Director Jimmy Tan. Regards to this safe road to school plan. Back in October of 2019, the city submitted an application to Caltrans requesting about $250,000 in grant funding through the Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant to develop this plan. And this plan is to help, identify measures, to support the community for safe, walking and biking for all the students and their families around the neighborhood. So some of the recommendations that we will be looking at, as part of the plan includes like traffic calming measures and improvements to pedestrian infrastructures. And we'll also be having a technical advisory committee on board with stakeholders, from the schools and as well as the community to develop this plan. So right now, again, it's great. It was a competitive grant application. So, it's great that the city was able to get this about $250,000 in funding to develop this, and that we're anticipating this plan to start sometime in fall of 2020. And there is a matching fund that's required, about a little over 11% matching, so about $32,000 worth, which will be coming out of Measure A funds.
Okay, thank you. Anybody, Councilmember Medina?
Yes, thank you, thank you, and congratulations. That's a nice haul. Does this grant have anything to do with how staff were out at Bel Air and met with the Safe to School program personnel out there?
Correct. That's part of it. I think that this will actually not only look at the Bel-Air school, but we'll be looking at other schools within the community as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Good work.
Thank you.
Through the mayor, but
Councilmember Mason, sorry, I apologize. Looking at the other screen.
just a quick question. When does I may have just missed it. When does the grant expire?
I believe it's 2023.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have the exact date, but the year is 2023.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna thank you, Director Tan. Appreciate your time. We're gonna move on to item F, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with the California Conservation Corps, known as the CCC, for defensible space clearance and fire mitigation activities in Crestmoor Canyon in the amount of $608,024, subject to court approval. And city manager.
As we bring in the fire chief, the council will remember in November of 2019, we were successful in converting the remaining community service hours that PG&E needed to perform to a financial contribution in the amount of $3 million to fund a Crestmoor Canyon fire mitigation project. That $3 million has been deposited with the court as a trustee. And we are in the process of both developing a plan to submit to the court for the full expenditure of those funds, as well as conducting the CEQA analysis for that project. What is before you is a agreement with the California Conservation Corps to expend $600,000 of funds for direct fire mitigation in the county, in the canyon, that will ultimately be paid for by that $3 million. So with that, I've asked the fire chief to give a more detailed explanation, and I believe he has a PowerPoint ready to go.
Chief Delay.
Okay, give me just one moment here. Just want to share my screen here. Okay, can everybody see my screen all right? Great. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, Ari DeLay, your fire chief. I'm here to give you a brief update on the Crestmoor Canyon wildfire mitigation project, as our city manager has alluded to. On the phone, I do have available for us Janet Wolgamuth from the California Conservation Corps, who's the conservation supervisor as well, in case we have any follow-up questions with her. But I'll move through the presentation here this evening and give you that brief update. So our objective tonight is to receive an update on the mitigation project itself, and then eventually adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement with the California Conservation Corps to provide that defensible space clearance and fire mitigation activities in Crestmoor Canyon in the amount of $608,000 and $608,024, again, subject to court approval. The agenda is also to provide some background on Crestmoor Canyon itself. Talk about some of the recent actions that we've taken to mitigate and address the wildfire issues in Crestmoor Canyon itself. Talk about the California Conservation Corps' contract, and then talk about the request to Judge Alsup in regards to the Conservation Corps, and then ultimately, hopefully, take action by the City Council, and then provide any questions, for you this evening as well. So if you can see before you, this is Crestmoor Canyon. It's kind of, a wild portion of the community, which has a significant amount of vegetation in it. And over the years, this large open space totaling 76.6 acres area that contains some native species, both Monterey and mostly native trees. In close proximity to our roadways throughout San Bruno, right adjacent to Sneath Lane on the north, Highway 35 to the west, and San Bruno Avenue to the south, and 280 to the east. Two different neighborhoods surround Crestmoor Canyon, Bonewood and Crestmoor neighborhoods, and the Crestmoor Canyon itself is within a quarter mile to the west. The open space, of Sweeney Ridge, which is a federal responsibility area in the National Park Service and Golden Gate National Recreation. The Crestmoor Canyon is specifically unique, obviously, to the city of San Bruno. It was directly adjacent to the San Bruno gas pipeline explosion. And an important piece of that emergency that took place was the spread of the fire into Crestmoor Canyon the evening of the fire itself. So some recent actions that we've taken to mitigate and address some of the fire concerns within Crestmoor Canyon. Back in 2018 and 2019 fiscal year, we received a grant for $15,000 from the California Fire Foundation to conduct some brush clearing and improve access into Crestmoor Canyon and the fire road that comes off of Engvall. That work was completed back in the 18-19 fiscal years. Most recently in 2019, the City Council approved $37,000 for a wildfire risk assessment plan that was called No Harm. And that identifies some of the most hazardous areas within the city and their hazard, and it stratifies the risk for the city. And Crestmoor Canyon was on the more high hazard side of things, along with some other areas that were identified within the city of San Bruno. 2019-20, again, we also approved $75,000 for vegetation management and fire mitigation in Crestmoor Canyon. That work was approved and initiated. We've worked to establish this Crestmoor Canyon Wildfire Mitigation Plan, the initial steps for that plan and that project. Working with Community and Economic Development and the mapping contractor, we developed a map that reflects a 30-foot and 100-foot clearance behind the residents in Crestmoor Canyon to really identify that defensible space that's necessary to take place in that mitigation work. We've obtained some preliminary cost estimates from CAL FIRE and other contractors to do mitigation work in the canyon to kind of help identify where the priorities will be within the plan. Excuse me just a second here. And we work to develop a general scope of work that more clearly defines the cost estimates for work in the canyon. And then we're working to develop an estimate for ongoing maintenance of the canyon and create some budget strategies for annual funding for the project work. We've most recently hired a consultant and project manager to develop the actual Crestmoor Canyon wildfire mitigation plan. This plan will kind of go on concurrently in the background while we do some of this work with the California Conservation Corps. And these are some initial steps with the California Conservation Corps that we can use to get some boots on the ground in the canyon and actually provide some really immediate remedies to the residents there and provide some fire safety. And the last piece, again, is our to-dos, and that's to develop this contract with the California Conservation Corps itself. If you look at the screen there, you'll see Crestmoor Canyon and those identified zones. There's two different buffers. That 30-foot buffer is in pink along the edge directly behind the residences. And the green zone there is that 100-foot buffer behind the residences as well. And the idea and the concept is to take the contract with the 3 Cs and actually perform that handwork behind the structures to provide that 100-foot defensible space to protect them should a wildfire break out in Crestmoor Canyon. So the request to Judge Alsup, should the council approve the request for funding for the California Conservation Corps work, this request for approval would be requested through the courts to be able to provide direct boots on the ground and spent only on vegetation management and fire mitigation that directly benefits our San Bruno residents and not on consultants or any regulatory approvals and needs for the project. And that was specific direction given by Judge Alsup in regards to the dollars that are coming from PG&E for fire mitigation in Crestmoor Canyon. And then the final is the request action from the City Council to adopt a resolution to have the city manager execute the contract with the 3 Cs in the amounts shown. I'm going to open it up for any questions from the council in regards to the project.
Thank you, Chief, for the report and information. Councilmember Mason?
Hey, thanks for the report. I just had a question around the actual, if it would be possible as part of the project to put a trailhead at the very beginning of the trail?
Yeah.
Chief?
So, members of the council, so the plan, this particular work is to be done kind of basically in the background while we're developing the larger plan and the environmental studies that are required for the entire project. And that is, definitely part of the scope of this wildfire mitigation plan is to get some community engagement, find out what the needs of the city, the Parks Department, and the community are to try to blend those things together and provide the best solution while providing this wildfire mitigation and protection work at the same time.
Okay, thanks. And then is the contract? There's no contract in the packet, so is the contract have negotiations started, or where are you with that?
Yeah, the California Conservation Corps is specifically excluded from requirements of competitive bidding by the nature of their organization and state law, and they actually come at a significantly reduced rate than a competitive bidding process. They actually, the rate is about $24 an hour, fully burdened for each hour, including supervision. So it's a great opportunity for us to get a low-cost labor for some great work that needs to get done in the canyon, and provide a unique opportunity for youths to get job skills and promote their careers at an early age.
So my last comment was going to be that I am familiar with the group, and I think it's great that the City of San Bruno is partnering up for this project. But the earlier question was just whether there's already a contract in place. Are we using a template contract that they have? Where is that contract?
So we have a sponsor agreement. It just says we will be a sponsor for their organization, and then there's a contract that is prepared and ready for the council to be able to approve with the city manager's office.
Okay.
Yeah, Councilmember Mason, I can toss that to the city council, but our routine process is not to attach the contracts and send those to the city council. The city council authorizes the city manager and the organization to execute. And so sometimes they are generated, at other times they are not by the time the action happens. At this time, we have the contract for this one project.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Medina.
Yes, thank you for the report. Just wanted a little bit more clarity on when the council approved the $75,000 back in last year. Those funds are being used to hire the consultant to put together the plan. Is that correct?
There's two different buckets of money totaling $125,000 for fire mitigation. The very first portion actually was an initial contract with the California Conservation Corps to start even prior to this larger contract. Now, just bring to your attention, it's not in the packet, but this contract is actually a 5-year contract, and the first year provides the bulk of the work to occur, and then 4 additional years that are included in this contract that would provide a certain time frame for them to be out there to what we call spike out. And spiking out is probably the most productive way we can actually utilize their services, where they'll actually camp on site for 8 days at a time, providing 10 hours of work per day. So they don't use the travel time. Their base is out of Watsonville. So if we had them drive back and forth every day, a lot of time would be lost actually doing the drive. So we have them spike out on site for 8 days at a time.
Oh, okay, but the $75,000 that we authorized, has that been spent yet then?
Yeah,
or is that
City manager.
Yeah, let me opine on that. So there are 2 pots of money for work in the canyon that the city council has authorized. One is approximately $7,000 that has routinely been a part of the annual operating budget that is spent on fire mitigation. That, as we know, has not been sufficient to do all the fire mitigation work. In addition, once we were developing a project to be approved by the court and funded by PG&E, the city council took an action to allocate, I believe it was either $125,000 or $175,000 that went to a capital improvement project. That money is the money that will pay for the consultant. And remember, what we heard from the judge is that they did not want the $3 million to be used for consultants and preparatory work. They really wanted that $3 million to be exclusively used for, as the judge said, it boots on the ground doing the work. And the city council did allocate money to the capital improvement project for all of the beginning work and the CEQA filing. And you're absolutely right in remembering that, but that's not the $75,000 that we're talking about. that will be spent on this year on working to clear that defensible space area.
Okay, I'm more clear on that. Thank you. So as for when this work will start, are we going to wait for the environmental work to be all completed, or is there enough work for them to start before that?
Chief Delay?
Yes. So there's two different components. There's some work that's going to be initiated on the 22nd of this month that is separate from this particular contract. And that work would be done under a CEQA exemption that's already been filed on behalf of the city. There's a specific exemption for 100-foot defensible space within the law that allows us to get that accomplished under that CEQA exemption. So that work initially is going to start then, and if approved, this contract would follow suit directly after those hours are utilized that have initially been appropriated.
Okay, and my last question is, in notifying the residents that are adjacent to the canyon and it being on the city's website, how are we going to let people know what's happening? Because a number of residents have been waiting for a while to have something bigger done, and I just wanted to make sure that they are being updated, and how will they be informed?
Sure. So, Councilmember
Manager?
We will develop a plan to notice all of the residents at the appropriate time as we're working behind their house. And so we won't do a blanket notification because it will sort of take time for them to work their way. But we will do a direct notification to the individual homeowners. And that's a normal part of our process, and that will certainly be done here.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from colleagues? If seeing none, I just want to thank the fire chief first. I think it was day 2 when you started. You had to go see Judge Alsep in San Francisco, and I've had to stand before him. Well, been there twice, stood before him once, and that's a lot to be thrown into, I can tell you, with the judge. And the thing to my colleagues too, one of the things he was emphatic about, the judge, when I stood there on the second occasion before him, was that the consultants in his world was not where these monies should go, where we took the probation hours that I don't believe, and I think most of my colleagues believe, was not being expended correctly or to benefit San Bruno, but instead that it really showed significant difference. And that's why the fire chief and staff have been making those moves and making progress from what they've been doing and what they are going to do. So when going back before the judge, it shows good faith, and we kept our commitment. And again, I want to remind that, you know, I did some of the families of those who lost loved ones, and, you know, they were in favor of this and felt also it was something that was well worth it to protect the neighborhood and the surrounding folks. So anyway, want to thank the chief for that. And I'm being told there's a member of, okay, there was, but now there's not. Okay, so there was somebody there and they dropped off as far as for the speaking.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm here.
Oh, Janet is from CCC, and Janet, welcome.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Chief DeLay, Mayor, council members, and staff for having me join today. We're super excited to start working on this project. As you know, California is really being impacted with heavy fuel loads right now, and of course, increased fire hazards and dangers. And in talking with Chief DeLay, we've been doing a lot of similar projects like what we're going to be doing there in the canyon for the city of Santa Cruz, doing very similar work, doing the fuel reduction in both a high density of homes as well as in their public park areas where they're having, unfortunately, homeless encampments, a lot of fires. So we are super excited to be doing it, having the crews out there. I also want to invite all the council members and of course the mayor, come out, see the crews at work, talk to them. They love having you folks out to really show your appreciation for the work that they're doing. And these are young folks that are making a huge difference in California for all of us.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for being here and waiting to offer that, and we appreciate it. And it is a good group, and I'm glad that they're going to be a part of our community and making a difference. Thank you. Councilmember Medina.
Yeah, just a quick question now that that Janet is here. Is there opportunities for San Bruno youth to join up with you guys?
So the California Conservation Corps hires year-round, so there's never any downtime for us, like during the winter months or anything like that. We hire year-round. All youth have to be 18 to 25 to join our program. Obviously, a California resident. They do a whole background. Like Chief DeLay was saying, our closest office to you, obviously, is in Watsonville. It's a little bit of a trek, but we do have other locations throughout the state of California that will provide them housing. So if they choose to leave the area, get a good start at a different location, there are those opportunities. Right now, we have 7 residential locations throughout the state. Several of them are firefighter locations where they can actually become firefighters. And as I'm sure everybody's aware, the governor has just given CAL FIRE more opportunities to hire, and part of that package is including us. So we are looking for more young people to join, especially those who are interested in firefighting. So if you do have folks, we ask them to obviously go to our website. And the other part of this is those young people can earn not only a monthly stipend, but they can earn scholarships to go back to school on. If they really work at it and they pull a couple of years with us, they can walk out with about $14,000 in scholarship money.
Great, thank you.
Very nice. Thank you for that information. And I believe from our fire, they may be going out also at some point with the crew and teaching and educating them and teaching them some first aid and CPR, et cetera. So thank you. Sounds like a great program.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for your patience. Thank you for being here. Thank you for what you're doing. Okay, are there any other questions on that? If not, we have items A, B, C, E, and F that we can take in one action, and D we're going to have to do separate. Is there any action from council?
Mr. Mayor,
I will move that.
Yeah, hold on. I'm sorry. Yes, City Manager.
Before you take an action, I do have an answer to Councilmember Mason's question about the plumbing contractors. So we've been able to research that, and I would like to provide a quick answer.
Okay.
Those 3 companies do not represent work that was done on behalf of the city. What it represents is when a plumbing contractor or any contractor applies for an encroachment permit upon city property, they have to issue the city a performance bond, and this is the refund of that money. And so what you're seeing is our check register, which is essentially our positive pay file from the bank. And any check we write, whether it's actually paying an invoice or refunding money, shows up here. And that's exactly what that is. So it is not work that was done on behalf of the city. It is the refund.
Thank you. And if there's any way to identify that, I think in the future that would be helpful, because when you look at it, there's 5 companies I'm looking at right now. And it does look like we're spending a lot on plumbing. So if possible, to put in parentheses like bond reimbursement, I don't know, but I'm just throwing that out there.
And that bond could go for plumbing and other elements that are coming in for an encroachment. There's X number of dollars, and then once completed and the city sees it, they get a check mailed to them. Okay, so we're back to items A, B, C, E, and F. Do I have action from council on consent?
Through the chair.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
I just wanted to throw out a comment that the things that are on consent generally don't require this much discussion. And I was just kind of watching the clock, and I know that there's interest in some of these things. I know individual check items it's generally been our practice to ask those things prior in an email so that staff does have time to respond to those. They generally don't need to occupy a lot of our meeting time. And so I just wanted to suggest to my colleagues that if they do have specific questions like that don't really require a lot of discussion among the council, that they consider sending those in ahead of time and get your answers offline, so that we don't spend a lot of our meeting time and the public's time in discussing a lot of these things. That's really the intent of the consent calendar. And you know, if there are things that need to be taken off consent, then you know, luckily the fire chief did have a presentation ready for that one, but for the most part, these items don't have a lot of documentation behind them, and so staff is generally not ready to present on these. So I just wanted to put that out there, just sort of as advice to our newest council members. It's kind of been the practice in the past to do some of those things offline. So just a suggestion and a recommendation going forward. And with that, I will make a motion to approve all but item D on the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Motion by Vice Mayor, seconded by Councilmember Medina. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Mason.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Medina.
Aye. All right, now we're going to move to item D, and this is an item that, Mr. Salazar, do you want to say why you're recused, or so at least it comes from you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so I do live half a block away from the property in question, and so I will be recusing myself from this particular approval. Although it's gone through, this is the the second action required on these, and so I will be muting myself and turning off my camera while the rest of my colleagues proceed with this action, and then I will return once that is done. Thank you.
And I think the question to legal counsel or city clerk is, should we remove the vice mayor from the screen altogether?
Yes, I've just moved him to the attendee part of the meeting.
That button, you hit that button quick. Okay, so let's move on to item D. There are, because we've had to pull it like this, there are going to be 4 actions that are required within this. First, we have waive the second reading, and then we need to adopt the ordinance amending the section Title 12 of the land use of the San Bruno Municipal Code to change the zoning map from the commercial to the PD, and that's the first action. So we'll also have a second action, because we have an ordinance approving the development agreement. That also will require waiving the second reading with a second and a roll call. So there's going to be 4 actions, to my understanding, unless I'm incorrect, for this. We can't take it all at once, unfortunately.
Oh.
I know.
We can't?
That's what, no. Well, because
Okay.
we pulled it. We've pulled it for a separate vote. Because we have to. So our 4 actions, the first one is waiving the second reading. Do we have a motion and a second?
Hold on. I had a question. It's on page 39. I just want to make sure I'm on the right resolution. Sorry, Mayor Medina.
That's okay.
Before we vote. It's page 39. It's attachment 2 to... Oh, sorry. It's the resolution, ordinance number 2020, and ordinance of the City and City Council of the City of San Bruno approving a development agreement between the city. I'm trying to see if that's what we're voting on. Hold on. I just have it in my notes. So I think it's the first one, but I guess I just want to say that there's a correction. There's a reference to the CPI on page 39. And it just refers to the CPI increasing, but the development agreement does say increase or decrease. And so it's just, I just want to make sure that our documents are consistent. So if that correction can be noted.
Mr. Mayor,
City Attorney?
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Mason. So we can simply change that a parenthetical phrase in the whereas clause, the last whereas clause on page 39. Yep. To say subject to annual CPI modifications. And I think that should cover it. And I think it will be consistent. It doesn't affect the development agreement, and I think we should be fine with that. Doesn't need to come back for any further action.
Okay, I agree. Thank you. And then I just wanted to make sure that the resolutions from my read, they're specific to Mills Park. We're not waiving anything. We're not changing anything to any other space except for the Mills Park development, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So first action is we need a motion and a second to waive the second reading.
And Mr. Mayor, that would be to waive the second reading on the
First ordinance, amending the section to 12.96.020, right?
Right.
So do we have a move that we waive the first reading, for the second reading, excuse me. Is there a second?
Second.
So motion made and second by Medina.
Medina. Okay, thank you.
Medina, and roll call, please.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Mason?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Mayor Medina?
Aye. Next
Motion
action,
carries with Vice Mayor Salazar recused.
thank you. Next action would be to adopt the ordinance amending section 12.96.020 of Title 12 Land Use of the San Bernardino Municipal Code to change the zoning map from the commercial C to the Planned Development PD district with a development plan for the project based upon the findings for approval in the ordinance, including the CEQA conformity determination. Is there a motion? I'll move the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Medina, motion and seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Davis?
Sorry, writing some notes. Yes.
Councilmember Mason?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Mayor Medina?
Aye. Now
Motion
we need.
carries with Vice Mayor Salazar recused.
Thank you. Now there's the waive the second reading, and that will be for our second ordinance. Is there a motion and a second to waive the second reading of the second ordinance?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Councilmember Medina, Councilmember Davis, roll call, please.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Mason?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Mayor Medina?
Aye. Next action would be to adopt the ordinance approving a development agreement and affordable housing plan based upon the findings for the approval in the ordinance, including the CEQA conformity determination for the property at Mills Park Center, located primarily at 601 through 799 El Camino Real, and the adjacent commercial site at 601 through 611 El Camino Real. Linda, would you like to offer a motion, or?
Oh, wait. Thank you.
Okay.
So moved.
I'll second. Well, there's been a motion made by this time, reverse the Medinas. Councilmember Marty Medina and Mayor Medina, roll call, please.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Mason?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Mayor Medina?
Aye.
Motion
All right.
carries with Vice Mayor Salazar recused.
And since you bring up his name, could you bring him back in? And thank you very much, City Clerk.